want to start with a question that's probably in everybody's mind. Who is this guy? And that's actually a photograph you would have seen if you searched for me on Google until about 2 years ago. It's from my grad school days at Stanford when I was studying engineering. So I started my career in computer science, IT consulting, and then management and operations engineering. So perfect training to become a marketer and run a creative team at Google. But the reality is I actually accidentally fell into marketing. And I fell in it from a perspective of the temperament that creative and technical people have. I wasn't a very good engineer, just in case you're wondering. And I'm sort of an okay marketer. But the reality was that there were some really brave people at Google who decided to hire me into their marketing team and give me the ability to run a lot of really bold, ambitious experiments and projects. And I've been doing this for a few years now. And what I've really found is when you strip away all the subtle differences that we portray between creative and technical people in our stereotypes, that they're fundamentally the same. They both want to make something from nothing, and they want to be the first one to do it. So now I spend my time at Google trying to figure out how do you take this discipline of engineering and everything that makes Silicon Valley so great, and the creative discipline, as we know in traditional advertising, and really the fusion of those two, how might that change what we're doing as opposed to just the technologies that we're inventing. So the rest of this presentation is really about my ongoing journey, which I am sharing with, I'm sure, some folks in this room and really an open invitation to everybody. So first thing, let's take a quick history lesson or a reminder. As you saw, Bill Bernbach gets referenced quite often in advertising. And for those of you who don't know him, he's the B in DDB. And the year's 1959, he has this 1 + 1 = 3 moment where he puts art directors and copywriters together for the first time. It's a revolutionary idea inside advertising because you suddenly have something called a creative team, which to us is very normal today. But back then, and especially those of you who watch Mad Men, was a magical thing for the industry. And it's known as the creative revolution. There's tons of books and articles about it. There's even an Emmy Award-winning movie called Art and Copy. And it's really well documented. And it has shaped how we've built advertising, and even do to a large extent today. The interesting thing is when we look at the changes that are happening in the industry right now, we're going through a very similar time that they went through. And what happened back then was advertising sort of moved to storytelling, and the stories shaped our culture as much as they shaped our products, right? This VW ad and this campaign is really seen as the trigger point of that creative revolution. So what could we learn from a change that happened 50 years ago and apply it to the stuff that we're going through today? So luckily, I have a clip of the man himself. Now, this is from 1976. He's interviewing with BBC. It's something by 4 A's. So let's watch what he has to say. Oh, sorry. Okay. First technical pause. Oh. Works.
I think advertising, essentially, the persuasion part of advertising, is going to be the same 100 years from now. Because the man with talent will be able to persuade, and the man without talent won't, no matter how much knowledge you bring to him, no matter what mechanical devices you have. We have a great television complex in our offices now. We've moved, and we were able to take advantage of all the new inventions. But I've got to tell you that those new inventions aren't going to create a great new idea. And I keep telling that to our people. That little thing, sitting by yourself and getting an idea, is far more important than all the technology in the world.
What an interesting insight from a man, right? Like this, imagine this time, like MTV hasn't been invented, cable television doesn't exist. He's just established his television advertising lab, right? And he's still thinking about something and a change that the industry is going through, which when we look at ourselves today, we're going through a very similar change. And the reality is that the world around us is changing at an insane pace. I don't need to throw buzzwords at you, but when we look at big data, social, mobile, all of this is placing so much demand on us as users of that technology that we really need to figure out and go back to those principles of what's the idea that we have to make. And all this technology is really enabling us to make amazing things, right? Things that deal with our day-to-day, things that make our lives better, And every marketer in this room is actually thinking about how to make things that make their customers' lives better, and a new idea that's relevant and exciting and delightful and surprising. Yet, that same technology also allows us to make complete garbage. Because sometimes we have a weak idea and we think the latest new technology, be it Google Glass or some shiny new thing, is going to prop up that weak idea and make it magical because the shiny toy will attract everybody to come to the campaign or the brand. And I think that's bad for customers and it's bad for brands, and it's not going to lead us in the right direction. So we really look at technology purely as a tool that helps bring those ideas to life in a different medium. And this is a lot easier said than done, right? And really, digital has a really bad reputation for being far too transactional and really not sufficiently emotional. And I naturally tend to disagree, but we had to really test this out in the market. So about 2 years ago, we ran this really large and public experiment called Project Rebrief. And what we did was we took 4 ads, like really culture-shaping, industry-defining ads from 60s and 70s, right, that had defined the brands that we love today. And we worked with the creative directors who were in their 70s and 80s and thankfully healthy enough to work with us to reimagine what those advertising campaigns would look like today if they had access to all the tools available, right? And it was kind of a really interesting exercise going in because you don't really expect people who've retired from the industry 25 years ago to come and create the most exciting, awesome digital campaigns. So let's take a look.
The way the technology is used today, you've got handheld devices, you've got screens, you've got 3 screens. People can communicate, they can share and search.
There are way too many ads on every single page. Too much focus on technology and not enough on people.
The users are telling us what they're interested in, where they want to go.
The first display ad basically said, find out more, click here. And then the 15 years that followed, that's basically the only innovation we saw.
If you can think it, you can build it. If you have time to make it, you have time to make it wonderful.
To come up with great display advertising, you need to first come up with just great advertising.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
You ate it, Ralph.
Trying harder is still the best way to do business.
You can drive a Volvo like you hate it.
Technology has left me pretty much in the past.
I'm not sure that it can be done.
Howie believes we're geniuses. I believe we're idiots, and we're both right.
My own impetus is a little bit of insecurity. Can you do it, champ?
How do we tailor that for banner?
That's your job.
From my generation, that's absolutely science fiction.
I don't think we estimated the power of this.
So that's actually a trailer for a documentary we made on the project, which we shot along as we built the project. It's an hour-long documentary. You can watch it on projectrebrief.com. And the reason we made the film was it wasn't about us making 4 shiny new ads. It was actually us trying to show the world how those ads might be made and learning along the way how to do this ourselves. And it's really one of the most fascinating learning exercises of my life and has really shaped a lot of what my team and a lot of what our marketing team at Google is trying to embody in the work we do. So naturally the question was, does it work? Well, if you look at our industry standard benchmark for creative success, is number of tweets and awards you've got. And so that's Harvey Gabor at 79 years of age winning the first ever Cannes Grand Prix for mobile advertising. Exactly 40 years after he won the Clio Gold for the original Coca-Cola spot that he did. Whoa, okay, that's my phone, hold on. It's for a demo later. So he won that award. It's such a beautiful story of the guy winning the most coveted award in advertising in 1972 for the Coca-Cola work, and then going back to win, the most coveted award in mobile advertising. And the Coke example that you saw in the previous presentation, that was the output of this campaign that we ended up doing. We ran it in a small experiment in South Africa, New York, and Buenos Aires, and then Coke took it, and now they're taking it international. So I felt like Karate Kid, except instead of painting fences, I was bringing coffee cups. But it actually taught us a really interesting lesson, right? That great ideas transcend time and medium, and we really should look at all the technology toys, not as the idea, but how might that make our idea better, and bring it to bear for people in ways that might surprise and delight them. So, awesome. How do we shape our future? Well, let's take a look at this future, right? And so this is what I think is a leading indicator, and caveat that I do work at Google. So that's the heat map of Android activations over the last 1 year. I think it was taken a couple of months ago. And, we've had, 1.3 million Android devices activated every day, 1 billion Android devices activated around the world. And that's just an indicator of how the world is getting more connected. And what you'd expect to see is the developing world and the richer people like us have more of these devices. Except the tremendous amount of activities happening in those red spots that you see. India, South Asia, Central Asia, Brazil, and Central America. They're growing at 500% a year, right? And the rest of the green part that you see is actually growing at about somewhere between 200 to 300% a year. And at this pace, and I'm sure you've heard many statistics about this, in the next 6 to 7 years, there are going to be 5 billion people connected. Think about what that means for us from how we make our advertising, right? It's changing the way we live and consume content. My God, sorry. It's actually somebody tweeting in this room. That's what I'm getting. And I need that for my demo, so I can't really shut it down. So where was I? So, like a lot of people are getting connected and we're getting real-time feedback on what we are doing. But what it also actually means is we need to really stop thinking digital marketing and really stop thinking about our mobile strategy or social strategy. What we really need to start thinking about is how do we do marketing in a flat, connected world, right? And that's a subtle shift on what we're doing in the way we make stuff, but it's an important one, right? Now, what does that mean for everything that we do and how might it impact? I don't really have an answer. But what I do know is that it's sort of a big spaceship and we're all on the same spaceship. And it's a bumpy, exciting ride that's getting faster and faster every day. And it could be Armageddon and the worst thing ever and end of life as we know it. Or it could be the most exciting thing ever. And I sort of veer towards the latter part, and I guess I'm still making ads. So how do we look at some of this stuff, right? You saw this ad in the last presentation. It's not very different than what was referenced, which is we look at this in terms of problems we can solve for people or how we can make their lives better. So when we, hold on a second. I actually really do need to shut this up now. Okay. So when we look at advertising and the way we're making stuff, I tend to look at it from Maslow's hierarchy, right? Which is the fundamental human needs will stay pretty stable. And the technology around us is going to change much faster. And what this campaign and the Dove campaign, or one of my favorites, which is actually from Canon called Creativity, Imagination, is really they're not trying to sell you a product, right? They're tapping into a fundamental human need along that pyramid, which is to feel healthier, to feel more beautiful, right? To express your creativity instead of selling you, here's another camera, here's another fancy shoe, and here's a product that will make you look all beautiful. And that's a fundamental human behavior and human need that we need to all start tapping into. And when we look at the marketing that all of us in this room are doing, we actually deal with these day-to-day mundane things, which are really important to the way we live our lives every day. And those are all opportunities for us to create these moments of interaction, which could be extremely, practical, like, run and get healthier, and here's a Fitbit or Nike Fuel Band to make you healthier. Or they could be extremely playful, like, a man dressed in a towel responding to your tweets on YouTube, That was the Old Spice campaign. So there's really that spectrum, and never underestimate the importance of those dumb moments of delight on the internet. And we've seen enough cat and dog videos to really see how that matters to people. So creating this type of new value is good in theory, but it actually requires behavior change in how we make marketing and how we make advertising. So when we look at this, code is becoming an integral part of that art and copy equation. And when I say code, I'm not just talking about people who sit and program in C++. It's digital craft people, just like art direction is not just about somebody with a camera taking photos and videos. Similarly, code is a lot about people understanding to make things for the web and off the web. And what's happening is really at a lot of agencies, this notion of code as a skill set is becoming integral to the creative process. And certainly Google's not the first one to propose it. I mean, to be honest, I didn't even know what a creative technologist was until a few years ago. But everybody is hiring them, right? And that's the first change that I see. Says we're in the middle of a second creative revolution in advertising of the like that we saw in the 60s. So how do we look at some of this stuff, right? Let's take a look at video that will give you a quick insight into what the world is doing. Now, the interesting bit about this video, it's actually made with art, copy, and code, and you're the first and the last people ever to see this. So let's make sure this works.
Today. As in today. As in right now. 1:28 p.m. It's a pretty exciting time to be doing what we're all doing. Because people like this, and people like that, are now sitting together with folks like this. And the work they're making isn't like the ads we're used to. It's stuff like this. This, these, and whatever this is. It's connecting the real world to the web, telling more personal stories with data, and using this stuff to make our lives easier and more fun. And wow, robots. Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time. And imagine what we could make next. Welcome to art, copy, and code.
So as you saw that video, everything in that video was actually real time. It was feeds coming from PSFK and Creativity Online, the time, the weather, everything was read in real time. So it looks and feels like a video, but it's actually an HTML5 website. And this is the sort of this indicator of what I said of how code can actually change even the most basic things that we build today. And the idea really behind this video was to actually show sort of a futuristic, I don't expect this to be running on YouTube anytime soon. But it gives you that perspective of what things might be. I'm going to switch back to my presentation for a second. Okay, so when we look at art, copy, and code as a project, we don't look at it as Google's going to put out shiny things, right? It's an open invitation to the entire industry to come work with us and really help us and together figure out how teams that make these amazing digital things should operate. Because I don't think any of us have the answers. A lot of times people think at Google, we're always ahead of the game and we kind of know the answers. Reality is I see this, see us struggle with this every day when we are trying to make stuff for our customers on the consumer side, or when we're working with our partners trying to come up with the next big idea that will work for their brands. And it's a challenge that I think we are not going to find the answers to sitting within the walls of Google. I think I heard a quote a few days ago, which was like, the smartest person in your industry is working at your competitor's company. So we really want to work with as many people in the industry as possible to really define what art, copy, and code means. And my team, as you heard earlier, works with brands and agencies to work on real briefs and real campaigns, and we make stuff that we launch in the market. We make Google tools easier to access. We bring our ads product and consumer products together. But a single line that we thread across the board is we only want to use products that are available to everybody. There's no point in us creating stuff that is one-off because it doesn't scale. And scaling is something really important to us at Google. Because when we look at this world in terms of sort of, there's the Wright brothers, they have this amazing, marvelous invention of flight, and they can fly for 12 seconds, and it changes the world, right? Sort of. It's not until the DC-8 and the DC-9 come along and lots of people can fly around the world that the world changes. So it's great for us to be making inventions, but in this project, we've particularly taken a stand that we want to work with things that can scale, so lots and lots of people in the industry can make it. And the most important thing sort of we've discovered as we've gone along the process is code needs to really have, as a skill set, a seat at the table from day one when you're starting to tackle the brief, and not be handed a big TV idea to the engineering floor, and ask them to figure out feasibility or find a hack because you've already sold the idea to the client, right? And that's something that we are trying to figure out, what role might code play and what type of skill sets might you need. Just like because you know the basic rules of grammar doesn't make you a great copywriter, just because you can code doesn't make you a great creative engineer. And that's something that we're starting to sort of figure out as we go along in this process. So I'm going to share 3 case studies with you about what we've done in the last 6 to 9 months. And hopefully they'll shed some light on what we're learning. But before I dive into this, I want to talk about 2 things. Oh, that was my backup video in case internet failed. So first one we've learned is always build to learn. And if you think of really art copy and code, it's sort of a meta experiment in building to learn, as opposed to just sitting and thinking about how things might be done. And I borrow a lot of stories, and I love to sort of understand from how startup world does this. Because for them, build to learn is not a catchphrase or a buzzword, it's sink or swim. And I love the story of how Zappos got their start. Some of you might have read it in Lean Startup. So this is, I think, 99. I don't remember the exact year, so don't quote me on it. But this is a time when big venture-backed startups like Webvan and Pets.com have actually failed, right? Because they went in with the big retailer mentality. And what Tony Hsieh does, he goes to some local shoe stores. He takes photographs of their inventory and posts them on the web. And what he gives them in exchange is, like, if somebody decides to buy them on the web, he will come to their store, buy it at full price, and ship them to the buyer. And that, if you think about it, is essentially what Zappos is even today, right? It's sort of a bit more complicated. But it's a very simple, minimum viable product that he's able to build very quickly. He's able to learn how consumers might actually engage with it and adapt his ideas as we go along. Are they going to care about quality of the shoe? Are they going to care about discounting? Are they going to care about customer service? You can sit and theorize anything, but there's actually no substitute to actually building, testing, and learning for what works and what doesn't. And the interesting bit is market research will always tell us sort of the perceived needs and perceived desires. Building stuff like this actually helps us understand latent needs and desires of our customers. So we always build across the board instead of just shipping stuff. Second is prototypes are the new storyboards. Now, there's a lot of talk about prototypes, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that prototypes are as fresh as ramen burgers or as important as Tom Brady's touchdown this weekend. But the reality is, the advertising industry has been doing prototypes for many years. They came in sketchboards, pre-visualizations, sort of video treatments. There's always references that are given. And they work really, really well for sort of what we call traditional marketing. But when you think about interactive experiences, they sort of fall flat. And it's because we don't always have the same references or the same creative wavelength as we do in other media because we've had so many years of training around it. So really, I think of prototypes as the new storyboards when we're trying to build and market interactive ideas. And think of these as sort of test drives before you put your money down for a fancy car. Because you really do need the business leaders, both on the brand side and within the agency, to actually believe in the idea and not just logically feel it. And we've figured out ways how to make people feel in the industry about television advertising, print advertising, and I think prototypes are starting to get us there for digital advertising. So keep these 2 things in mind, and I'll keep referencing them on how we sort of implement them in the work that we do every day. So what are these 3 case studies that we're going to talk about? Well, we actually were looking at, we can make anything that we want, right? But we were looking at 3 sort of themes this year, which there's a ton of activity happening around the world, but there's also a tremendous amount of creative potential on what impact they might have in how we engage with brands. So the first one is collaborative storytelling, right? If you go back to the map that I showed you about Android activation, that I'm sure iPhones and tablets and everything else looks the same, is the world is really flat, and that our brand experience now is not siloed to certain geographic areas. If you build a website or if you put up a video on YouTube, anybody in the world can go and see it. So that collective experience of how people around the world are going to experience the brand and their thoughts around it actually matter, right? So how might we tap into this really flat world that's connected all the time through the same tools to create these collaborative stories and make them a part of this bigger sum? Second is useful marketing. Now, idea of utility-based marketing has existed for a very long time. The first known example of this, or at least that I know, is Michelin Guide. Today we know it as the definitive guide to which restaurants we can't afford, or at least I can't, on holiday. But it actually started about 100 years ago as a campaign that Michelin did because they wanted to give people reasons to drive, right, and consume more tires. And as sort of think of it as Nike Plus from Michelin about 100 years ago, so you can consume more tires. And there are a lot of brands who are starting to adapt this utility, and I think this is starting to become a widely adopted phenomenon. There's a lot of brands who make apps and hardware pieces. So we wanted to really sort of test it out on what might we be able to do in categories that we didn't expect to. And the last one is really a big experiment in connected objects or Internet of Things, which was a term coined at MIT about 14, 15 years ago. And the idea here was the first application that we all think about connected objects or things is your fridge ordering milk for you because you're too lazy to go to the store. But what it could actually also mean is taking the data in real-time feed and having a conversation with people. What does it mean for a diaper company to actually have people engage with its brand in a connected object world? So I think there's a ton of potential there. We're going to explore some of that. So let's dive right into it. First one, Burberry. So Burberry is really known for their trench coats and the check and the boots and the umbrella. They're not really known for beauty products. They're not really known for a global romantic view of the world. But they have a certain view inside that they see their brand as a really romantic brand. And so they came to us with this challenge where we were partnering with, how do we get this millennial audience that doesn't care about beauty advertising, and as you've seen in the Dove example, has a very different world view of what beauty products mean. How do you get them to care about this? And also in a world which is full of clutter, every beauty product advertising looks the same, right? You go search for it on Google or pick up your favorite magazine, and there'll always be a really pretty model in some fantasy location, not a lot of words, just a brand logo at the bottom somewhere, and pouty lips with red lipstick color, pretty much. That's most what beauty advertising looks like. So how do you engage this millennial audience in a world that is so controlled and is so similar? How do you stand out in that? And clearly, so I was the right person, along with some teammates, to work on this, because in our first meeting, I asked them, what is a compact? Because I thought it was some new device that you get. Turns out I had to go do a lot more research on beauty products. But as we did this, the thing with our creative team kept standing out was a little red lip, kiss mark that you see everywhere. And it stands for more than just lipstick. It actually stands for sealed with a kiss, is how we started to look at it. And we thought, how might we use this kiss symbol, smudge mark, whatever we call it, in a way to actually bring these millennials together. So let's see what we launched. And this launched in June. Work.
Where to be apart, it hurts, and like the old movies, when I see you, you kiss my cheek. I said this is
I'm going to switch to a live demo. As you saw, the idea essentially was, could we let people send around messages sealed with their kiss, right? And what might that look like? And give the experience, from a design perspective, the same feeling that you would get emotionally while walking into a Burberry store. So the interesting bit of Google Product Plug was everything that I'm about to show you was actually built with open web technologies, HTML5, WebGL, modern browsing. And it runs, that's a standard 300 by 250 banner ad that runs anywhere on the web. And it runs across mobile phones, it runs across tablets. And that's really the power of scalability that I was talking about, as opposed to making apps or things that are very custom loads. So what you do is, this is a 300 by 250, you hover, and then the ad loads. So I'm going to try and send this to my girlfriend right now. Okay, so we allow the webcam. This is going to be slightly embarrassing. I have no idea what that's going to look like. It's okay. It's not too bad. You can actually, when you go on your tablets or your phones, because you can't access camera like that, you actually kiss your screen. I would highly encourage you to wipe it because there's a ton of bacteria on it. Okay, what color should we select? Like, is red? I have no idea what these are. I'll just stick with red. How about that? So then I click it. Now, so it's picking up my location already. I'm going to send this to her. Funny story is, actually I met my girlfriend right in this city about 4 years ago. So as you can see, I'm just filling out some of these details. And she gets a lot of these, so she's probably not going to respond. Right. So that's a simple message. I seal it with my kiss. And bam. It seals. Now see what happens. So I can click to rotate, make sure it's going to the right person, otherwise I'll be in trouble. And we hit send.
Elvis, he has a song and he sings it from his heart, like the way I sing to you and you sing to me. And we're at the stage where to be apart, it hurts and like the old movies.
That's the interesting thing. Everything there was in browser in real time, from like Google Maps images to 3D. I'm just going to mute this for a second. And what you also have is you can actually see real-time pieces flying around. So that's somebody from Monaco to, I have no idea where these are going. And fidelity is going to show up on the screen. We also have a global map in real time of where people are sending these kisses. Now, go back to that idea I said of a flat world. This campaign's actually only launched in the US and all the English-speaking countries. Yet, we have so much from Brazil, India, Australia. I have no idea what these are. That's probably Hawaii. And really just flattening of that world. We had millions of people engaged with this campaign. I'm just going to shut this down for a second. We had millions of people engaged with this campaign when it went live. And the most interesting thing that we found was the time spent on the experience on the web as well as the mobile phone was exactly the same, which we never really thought. So one of them was clearly wasting time or doing really, really well. So let's go back to where we were. Okay, so we've got this campaign going. That's awesome. It looks great, right? But that's not how it actually started. So I'm going to show you a combination of two videos that were the first prototypes of this. So this is going to be mildly hilarious. I'm sorry, Matt, if you're seeing this. Well, he's not. So that's one of our developers who actually came up with this idea, and he was really running this as an experiment in Hangouts where you can sort of add horns and what have you. We were like, oh, that's kind of interesting how you might be able to detect lips. We're like, well, that's cute, but how do you communicate the story of like what this world might look like? Here's another prototype. So the interesting thing about this prototype was it got the point across. It was obviously just something we sketched out. I remember getting the feedback that it's gorgeous, but it's all doom and gloom, and we want to be romantic. So then it went through 26 design iterations after that to get to what you saw. I only remember seeing the builds. They just kept going from the design team. But that was sort of the ideas of prototypes. I'm going to do another quick demo of sort of this building to learn example. When we started doing this, what we really figured out in some of our user tests was people actually really cared about how their lips looked on that, and it impacted how they would engage with it. Secondly, camera, lighting, situation, skin color, race, all of that matters in how we can detect lips. So I'm going to take you through this quick tool, and we're going to start with, I have no idea what that is, but a photo you might imagine seeing in your Facebook feed, and it's calibrating on what that might look like, right? Or what you might expect on a model with slightly better lighting, or what you might expect on the president in this situation. And what you can actually do is, so this is a tool that that we built so you can have like tolerances, and so you can see by simply adjusting sliders and how these might look, and obviously greater tolerance you have for error, the worse it looks. I'm going to spare the president. But the interesting thing there was we actually gave it to hundreds and hundreds of people, so we could actually test it out and see what works, and actually figure out when people might be happy just taking a photograph of their lip and getting the right lip imprint because it really mattered to them. So that was an amazing idea. We could have just built it with the 10 people that we were who were using it and launched it, but the ability to build a tool like this before we actually built the product allowed us to learn how to make the product in a way that actually works really well. So, let's go here. And what Burberry is doing now is actually starting to take this into the physical world. Really, so the idea is no longer digital or physical or traditional, it's an idea. So that's a photograph of their flagship store in London, as you can see along the walls, along the big screen. They're all starting to build these interactive experiences where people can go and interact with the Burberry brand through kisses in the real world. And I'm really excited sort of how this will evolve as time goes along. And that's what the snapshot of the world looked like on the day of launch, as all these messages were flying around in real time. And I think the favorite one was the bunch of people from South Korea sending it to North Korea. I'm not sure how many people read it in North Korea, but it was at least showed the power of really emotional things and ideas. So, okay, I want to do a quick time check because okay. So I'll breeze through this. The next one was Volkswagen. So VW, obviously as a brand, it really stands out within the auto industry. And their brief was, how do we build a community around people who love VW? And they actually ran this TV commercial last year in prime time. Let's watch it. What a fascinating TV commercial for a car company. Not a single car in this, right? And it's something that has made sort of VWs really stand out from a storytelling perspective over the years. And they really wanted to bring this idea to life as something that people could engage with on a day-to-day basis. So like, okay, that sounds like an interesting challenge. So we started doing some research, and we found this really interesting bit was, let me get the stat right, 144 million people in this country spend 50+ minutes every day in their cars. 3/4 of them are by themselves, right? And that's a total white space that is neither recorded nor tracked nor shared. And I'm sort of doing some fancy statistics here, but I'm guessing that's probably the largest amount of time we spend outside our home and work is stuck in traffic jams like that. So I thought, how might we engage people in those situations, give them a little bit back that they could share and make that time more shareable. So let's see the idea we came up with.
What if every time you started your car, you added a little more fun to the ride? Introducing Smile Drive, the first social app.
Oh, crap. What happened? Sorry.
What if every time you started your car, you added a little more fun to the ride? Introducing Smile Drive, the first social app to maximize fun on every drive. Smile Drive can be used with any vehicle equipped with Bluetooth, which lets it automatically pair in the background when you're driving. The app keeps track of things like distance, time, and weather. And remember Punch Dub? You get a punch when you pass another Volkswagen with Smile Drive. All the fun of the classic game, none of the dead arms. You can also unlock stickers for special achievements, like going on an extra long ride, passing a car that looks exactly like yours, or hitting the road on a holiday. At the end of each drive, you'll get a smile score, which sums up everything that happened on the road. Let's say you're about to go on a trip you know you'll want to share. You can make a smile cast. First, you name the trip and tag your passengers. Then, when you're on the road, your Smilecast page automatically gets updated with photos and posts so your friends and family can follow the trip online. And after the trip's over, the Smilecast is saved so you can relive the adventure all over again. No matter where you're going, with Smile Drive, you can sit back, enjoy the road, and go for happier drives.
So that's sort of a really early beta product that we've launched with them. And the idea really is that Gen Y is starting to think about cars not as a status symbol, but as a means to sort of a diet of digital experiences. And it really just enables you to capture a lot of that. So, well, the first question is, what did the prototype of this idea look like? Because it's such a complicated product that taps into gaming and social and quantified self. Let's look at this.
A driver downloads the application and completes a one-time pairing process utilizing Google Plus to authenticate and entering his unique vehicle details. From here on out, the driver simply turns on his car with a Bluetooth-enabled audio system or standalone device, triggering the application
the only thing
to
that
launch
prototype
and
does
begin
is
tracking.
it flashes a VW logo on the
Throughout the
screen.
drive, the
That's all
application
it does.
tracks
There's
key
nothing
trip
built in.
information
It's all
like location,
Facebook video.
speed, and direction. This can be used in any number of creative applications. The application is also aware of other vehicles and objects connected to the system. Here, two drivers pass one another, and the system recognizes the intersection. At the conclusion of the trip, the vehicle powers off, and the terminated Bluetooth connection signals to the application that the drive has completed. The driver can see the data from his trip on his phone and later through the platform's hub.
It's a very simple prototype, but it actually allowed us to communicate a really complicated idea in a very simple way to this audience. Okay, great. So let's go build this. Well, there were more challenges than we thought there would be in actually building this. Turns out our GPS on cell phones are terrible when it comes to accuracy and really suck a lot of battery. So we had an interesting challenge. So we're like, we want enough data points. So actually, let me take a step back. So when you're doing your GPS as the way you use it, it sort of notes where you start and where you end. In an application like this, it doesn't know where you're going to end, right? So it has to just keep tracking, and you could be on a drive for 4 or 5 hours, and it just has to keep tracking. So we have to balance that we need to get enough GPS points when you're traveling 70 miles an hour on the freeway, that we have accurate data representation, but not so many that it kills your battery halfway during the journey. So we kept balancing, and we got it down to a certain number of points that made sense. And what you see on the left is really, you plot the map down, and you sort of get the accuracy from Google Maps API, and then on the right is sort of what happens when you plot it to manually. What would you do? Of course, let's go to the API. Well, here's another drive, right? There's one errand point that you see, the blue one, which is on a clover leaf. We have no way of understanding where it is, whether you went it or not. So Google Maps API puts you in loops, and suddenly you have maps that you didn't go into, whereas manual line works. So we're now kind of like, okay, we need to balance all these metrics together, and what we really ended up doing was opening it up to, again, built a simple alpha, gave it to hundreds and hundreds of people, and it's very different than how you make advertising. You don't give your ads away to people. But we gave it away, and we just got about 1,500 drives in a matter of a couple of weeks, where we could manually then go and evaluate and improve accuracy significantly across the board. It's another simple example of constantly prototype and build to learn. And to launch this, what we ended up doing was, well, we didn't. The app is technically an ad for the car company, so we didn't want to make ads for the car, for the app itself. And what VW and Deutsch did was they actually partnered with influencers and real tastemakers, people with millions of followers and hundreds and thousands of subscribers on YouTube and Google+, gave them a VW in the app and said, hey, go out on road trips about things that you care about and share them with your fans in real time. And we found like all of that, like while individually they drove small engagement, collectively they drove massive engagements for a lot lower costs over a much shorter time period than you would expect from sort of traditional marketing of apps that you might be able to do. I'm going to skip past this video in the interest of time. So it's just one of those.
Remember how yesterday I was...
This is a set of photos, something that you might expect to see in Instagram feed or your Facebook feed or Google Plus feed about people just going about and doing and sharing their lives. And now there's VW associated with it in a slightly different way because we made it really seamless to do it. OK, so the last demo. So I'm going to do this in 2 minutes or less. So just a caveat, unlike VW and Burberry, this was a project that we called up our friends at Adidas and said, like, hey, we have this idea about a shoe that talks and can sort of has a social presence of its own. Would you be OK if we hacked a pair of your shoes? And they actually sent us a ton. Now half my shoes are Adidas. So I'm going to let you watch a video while I slip into these. I'll give you an interesting insight into that.
This is super boring. That's more like it. I love the feeling of wind in my laces. Here we go. Are you a statue? Let's do this already. Call 911 because you're on fire. En fuego.
Oh.
You're not afraid of a little cold, are you? Let's do this.
Wait till I tell
I'm growing weeds
about
here.
this. Put me back on, let's go again.
Sorry, my phone jumped ahead of the video. So that was actually a video that we launched at South by Southwest. Really, that was not even a concept video. We just had 2 pairs of shoes, and since then we've made. And just for clarification, we're not actually getting in the sneaker business. The idea was really to take the same data and figure out how might we change this. So that's what I was actually doing. Is again another 3x250.
You're not afraid of a little cold, are you? Let's do this.
I'm running around. You're gonna be silly.
I'm flying.
So it's responding to sort of my spins.
How's the air up there?
Right. So I'm going to end this session for a second. Just so. What you can actually see is it's sort of responding to my real-time data, but intelligently converting it based on history and having a conversation. Now, while my ad and that prototype is really not probably interesting to people, imagine Tom Brady running around with these, and you could sort of follow him along on what he's actually doing and how his performance is tracking, and getting commentary from his shoe as you're watching the game. Right? And it's really not that far-fetched from a technology standpoint because that data exists. It's just Belichick just keeps it on his iPad right now. But if you got access to that data, that's very easy to do. So again, this is another one of those examples of how technology for its sake is not very important, but applied in a slightly different context can do. And what you can see is, just to wrap up, is like it's really actually very simple technology. There's 3 sensors you can buy for less than $20, a battery pack, a Bluetooth antenna, and a small microprocessor so it can send the data to this. That's all, right? And we don't really need the speaker on the shoe. We kind of put it in there. And at the end of every workout session that you have, it generates a meme, right? So I don't know if I love following NFL memes and a bunch of meme websites on Twitter. And it's amazing, like what you could actually do in real time with data and make it so much more social and shareable than I just ran 300 yards, right? So I'll just end with this little video. Sorry, this shoe made it to Conan.
No idea what's happening here. I'm confused as well. Google has unveiled a talking shoe that comments on your running performance. Yeah. The shoe says 3 phrases: keep going, just a little further, and get off me, fatty. It's helpful.
So anyways, that was the end of that presentation. Thank you. And just to wrap up, like, there's 2 things you can take away from this entire, my presentation, this conference, is really think about those 2 questions. What do you think advertising will look like in 5 years? And what can you build today to shape that future, as opposed to waiting for the future to come? Thank you so much.